Hey, we are talking about self-improvement this month, and today our focus is going to be about teaching the 5 areas of self-development. And remember, we're teaching these things to our grandchildren, and the 5 areas are spiritual, emotional, physical, mental, and social. These are kind of what experts have determined are the 5 things that round us out, so to speak, and make us, well-adjusted adult human beings. So, one by one, spiritual. And this is our connection with God, self, and others on the deepest levels of human spirituality, thought, and emotion. Some people have very strong spiritual beliefs, others have none, but it is determined to be a part of our makeup as a human being. So how do we teach our grandchildren about this? And how does it change throughout their age and development? The best thing is by talking and demonstrating. Children, when they're little, they are mimics. They learn and do based on what they see us doing. So if you are very spiritual, practice those spiritual matters in front of them. If you go to church and you pray, let your grandchildren see you do that. If you raise your hands during worship, let them see you doing that. If you sing songs during worship, let them participate. They don't have to be perfect in their activities, but they are watching and they're learning something when they watch us. And then as they get older, share the dynamics of your inner being and your thoughts about spirituality. Talk to them. Ask them questions about how they feel about what their inner person is like and how it connects with God and how it connects with others and why that might be important to even discuss. Don't leave it to chance. I've actually heard people say, well, they'll figure some of those things out when they get older. Yes, they'll have choices to make when they get older, but they have to have a foundation to even start to analyze who they want to be in that regard. So talk to them all through their childhood about the possibilities and the things that we don't fully understand, but we're studying and learning all the time about them. The study of human nature and spirituality is an ongoing thing, and there are many, many, many opinions. We all have our opinions. And we all have our experiences. Share those with your grandchildren, particularly if you've had a unique awakening, spiritual type experience. Share that with your grandchildren and ask them questions. What do they think? Might they have some experience one day? Pray with them, interact with them, don't be afraid. And if you're not confident in your spirituality, then I would make a suggestion. Still explore it with them, but explore it together. If you're cynical, be careful about being cynical in front of young children. It really can quench some of their desire to learn if we are naysaying or bitter or angry in front of them or ridiculing. They take their cues from that too. And you may shut off their opportunity to learn and believe or to explore who their inner person is. So be very cautious. I think one of the most interesting spiritual things I've seen was at a church one time. Interesting in the negative sense. I saw a man who was an assistant pastor and had been an assistant pastor for a long time in an established church. And we went to a course that was being offered on prayer, and he got up and made a comment that really startled me. And he said, well, we're going to talk about prayer tonight. And God answers prayer, I guess. That little I guess at the end told me so much about where he was in his own spiritual journey, and yet he was pastoring. And so when we drop comments like that in, we pass along that insecurity or that fear that really God doesn't answer prayers. And most people of faith, if they've been faith-filled for very long, they've had experiences that would indicate that God does answer prayers. And so I use that story to just tell you to be cautious. If you have doubts, if you have cynicism, don't quench the spirit of a young child. Let them explore and grow into their own, okay? Moving on, emotional. And this is the focus on the development and developing and managing our feelings. We all have feelings. We've talked about that multiple times in videos. We're emotional beings. You can't help it, but you can manage how your emotions either take over and cause wild swings or crazy behavior, or if they consume you. One of the saddest things is to see someone who allows something negative, a negative emotion, to just consume them. And we've all seen that. That's a direction, when people get to the point of suicide and whatnot, it's usually because some emotional event in their life has just caused them to experience such deep despair that they can't see any possibilities or hope for the future. So how do we teach our young ones to recognize and manage our emotional responses to the events around us, to the people around us? As we develop maturity through experience, it becomes easier and easier to handle bigger and bigger difficulties. But there's a process of learning that has to take place to get us to that point. And again, I'm going to share an article here that we found. And it was actually, interestingly enough, it was on Indeed, which is a job search website. I've used it to hire people, but they had a great article under career advice about the 9 steps to improve our emotional intelligence. And so I'll read those 9 steps, and then we'll put the link in the notes so that you can go there and take a look at the article yourself. But here are the 9 steps, and they're very easy to apply with children and young adults. First one, be more self-aware. We can teach a child to think about why they're feeling the way they're feeling. What are they feeling? Identify the emotion. If you think about a very young child, they don't even know the names for emotions yet. Teach them that. Oh, it's great to see your joy. Or I'm sorry you're sad right now. What's happening? Put a name to it. Teach them so that they're self-aware of what's happening emotionally. Teach them to recognize how others feel. That's step number 2. We've talked, children are selfish. We all were as children. Whether we grow out of it or not, really in large part depends on whether we ever learn to recognize how other people around us feel. How are we causing them to feel? Are we even noticing that they have feelings? Talk with those things about children. Ask them why their little friend Susie or Johnny is sad today. Just get them thinking about it and connecting it to real people and real experiences in their life. Practice active listening. When you're asking some of those questions, listen to what their answers are so that you can guide them and walk them through the emotional process. Let's say their friend is sad today. You've asked them that question and they've identified the emotion. Why is your friend sad? And then talk about the reason and ask your grandchild, why do you think that makes them feel that way? Would it make you feel that way? Questions are just such a great tool. I talk about it all the time, but it's the way to explore what's happening with another human being. Communicate clearly. As you're talking, and you'll notice even in that example, use the right words. Use the words like sad or happy or joy, and then why. Communicate as you ask and probe. Explain to them if they can't put words to it. Help them. Well, Susie's cat died yesterday, and that makes her sad because she loved her kitty, and now she won't have her kitty to go home and see after school. Communicate why those things happen with children, and they'll pick up very quickly and understand. And stay on the positive. That's actually the next step, is stay positive. As you're interacting and teaching about emotions and developing emotions, try and put a positive spin on it. In that example that we've just kind of made up as we're going along here, and Susie's cat died and your grandchild is sad, you can stay positive even with something like that, because you can say, wasn't it a wonderful thing that Susie had a kitty she loved so much? She had so many good times with that kitty, and that was her little animal friend, and it was a wonderful experience. Those are the ways that we train children that emotions are natural, and there's good and bad. That's normal, but we can find the good in many things. Empathize. Teach a child to feel compassion and to understand why their friend is feeling happy or sad. Help them to learn to share joy and to comfort in sorrow. Be open-minded. We have to learn to be open-minded as we interact with other people. We all come at life from a different background, different life experiences, different teachings, different understandings of emotions, of values. And by being open-minded, we'll learn, number one, and we'll be more compassionate and empathize with other people. Okay? Listen to feedback. Help your grand learn to receive feedback. Give it kindly, give it gently. If their feelings are real but inappropriate in a moment, if they're stomping mad because their brother has a toy that they don't have, the feeling is real, but it might be inappropriate in the moment and the circumstance. So give them feedback, listen to theirs, and work through the emotional process. And stay calm under pressure. Easier said than done sometimes. We all struggle with that one, and your grandchild will too. They will watch us to see how we respond, and they will learn, and then we can guide by communicating clearly. All right, moving on to physical. And of course, this area of development is our body. It's strength, it's health, it's habits like eating and sleeping and getting good health care. Pretty straightforward on this one. And of course, we're all over the scale on that one. No pun intended. But we all have varying degrees of health and understanding about it. We can teach our grandchildren. Again, because of the technological world we live in, resources are abundant. If we have any health question, we can get online and get some answers. We can find a book, we can find a doctor, we can do whatever we need to do to learn about what's happening with our physical body and how to improve it. All right, moving on, let's talk about mental and brain and mental fitness, our learning, our creativity. This is another area we want to develop with our grandchildren and teach them about. There are some fun ways to teach our grandchildren to keep their mental health good, to keep their creativity flowing. We can have fun with lots of different types of games. We could take special classes with them or sign them up for special classes, creative writing or pottery, landscaping, floral arrangement, anything like that that gets those creative juices in the mental activities flowing. Those are good. Let your grandkids see you doing things like that. Don't just be a couch potato in front of the TV. Go with them to do some things, or take a class together, or study something together, do a craft together. Ask them questions, keep their minds active. There are so many good games that involve problem solving and communication. That will help with their mental health and their mental development. Finally, and not least by any stretch, is our social development. How are we in relationships and human interaction? And there are true skills involved in this. It's not easy always to get along with people. And I don't know if you've noticed, but in our culture today, people seem to be angry and impatient a lot. And sometimes it's very difficult to maintain kind behaviors, but it's even more important when things are difficult. So how do we teach this? Again, by example. Communicate about emotion or social issues. Communicate about how to be a good friend, how to interact politely with other people. Teach them manners. Ask questions again. How do you interact with your friends? Do you have a really best friend? Why is that your best friend? What makes you feel good about that person? Start to dig out those social connections and why they connect with their peer group. Play games like charades or 20 questions. Games are just great icebreakers. We do it as adults at parties. We have icebreakers and get to know one another, and 2-minute interview, and then you introduce them. All kinds of stuff like that is really fun. Do an online search. Find some games. You'll see a lot of things. I did that before we shot the video and saw some very interesting games that I had never heard of. And kids love games. If you get a group of kids playing games, you see lots of laughter and lots of interaction. We all want our grands to develop into well-rounded, mature adults. Part of what we do when we talk about these 5 areas of development is we help that process along. We become the teachers and the guides, and do it with joy, do it with love, and think ahead a little bit and plan your interaction with your grandchildren. Be grand, my friend.